Studio Mappa, the most popular building in anime history, is struggling, as some of you eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed. The studio's reputation as this animation powerhouse that consistently produces shows which look better than the industry average is slowly but surely falling apart. Over the past 3 years, the studio faced 3 different production debacles, and the word debacle is not an exaggeration. These productions, aka Attack on Titan, Hell's Paradise and Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, are riddled with production issues. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 features a surprisingly large amount of broken, unfinished animation, while Hell's Paradise fell apart right in front of our eyes, with nearly every frame being off-model. I've already talked about both of these shows in detail. In this video, I'll try to explain why these issues exist. Let's talk about Studio Mappa's current predicament. Make sure to subscribe. Studio Mappa produces some of the biggest, most popular shows out there, and to do so they have access to some of the best directors and animators out there. So then, why do these production issues exist? Why did multiple staff members publicly call out the awful production conditions? Why did Hell's Paradise look so bad? Let's try and answer these questions. So, you must be familiar with the Mappa animators haven't seen their families joke. Anime fans have been running that joke into the ground for several years at this point. The joke itself is stupid, but there is some truth to the concept behind it. A lot of Studio Mappa's issues stem from their business decisions and their inability to leave well enough alone. If a studio wants a show to look good, it must provide the team with 2 resources: time and talent. Also, here's One Punch Man character designer Chikashi Kubota clarifying how much of a non-factor budget is. Most shows have similar budgets, regardless of how good they look. Time and talent are the 2 resources that actually matter. And as you'll see, Mappa shows always seem to lack one or both of these resources. So here's how the studio works. They have multiple production lines, and each of these lines are responsible for different shows. So basically, Jujutsu Kaisen and Attack on Titan, despite falling under the common Mappa banner, are produced by completely different teams, with very little staff overlap. Let's start off with Attack on Titan. Mappa didn't have a dedicated team ready to work on this show. They picked it up and assigned it to whoever happened to be available at that point. The team, led by director Yuichiro Hayashi and character designer Tomohiro Kishi, both of whom had just finished working on Dorohedoro, were asked to create 16 episodes of AOT in a mere 8 to 10 months. The result? A broken, error-filled product. Part 1 was rough. While Hayashi's incredible direction and the absurd amount of work done by the animation directors and the CGI team kept the project alive, the issues were obvious. Questionable, borderline unfinished CGI models, extremely inconsistent animation, rushed compositing, and a general lack of polish. This show had it all. It did have a few highlights, mostly in the first half, but the overall product had a lot of rough edges. The fact that the team was able to produce anything is remarkable. The amount of time allotted to this production was criminally low. The schedule got better, or rather got less worse from that point on, which is why the next couple of parts looked more impressive. While all this was happening, Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 was being produced, of course by a completely different team. While JJK and God of High School were concerningly close to one another, the former pulled through without facing any major hiccups. Jujutsu Kaisen did have its issues, but overall it looked really good. The production line responsible for the show was led by animation producer Keisuke Seshimo. This line consists of a lot of freelance directors and animators. While Attack on Titan did have a few major names attached to it, it cannot hold a candle to the shows produced by this team in terms of talent involved. An unbelievable amount of veterans and promising young names tend to work on these shows. The team finished the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen and immediately started to work on Jujutsu Kaisen 0, which aired later that year. And once that was finished, they moved on to Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man's existence adversely affected Jujutsu Kaisen, both the movie and the second season. While Chainsaw Man had half as many episodes as Jujutsu Kaisen, it was just as, if not more, demanding. Director Ryu Nakayama's vision required constant movement, insanely complicated layouts, and a large degree of faithfulness to the character designs. That stuff takes time, which is the one thing this line lacked. But But wait, if the star-studded Seshimo line is busy with Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man, and Hayashi's team is busy with Attack on Titan, who will work on Hell's Paradise, another action-heavy show? Nearly no one is the answer. Hell's Paradise was an action anime with practically no action animators involved. Also, based on how rough it looked and the ridiculously large animation director counts, it didn't have a lot of time either, meaning this show lacked both time and talent. The few names who were involved did very little in terms of actual key animation. Again, I'm sure they would have contributed more if they had more time. Some of the Attack on Titan team helped out near the end, but they couldn't save this show. Hell's Paradise was Studio Mappa's second major production debacle. It was a show which obviously couldn't live up to the studio's standards. Again, I have talked about this show in more detail. They didn't have to pick this title up, especially because they knew they couldn't do it justice, but they went for it anyway. Back to the Seshimo line, as Chainsaw Man neared its end, the team started working on the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen, which was set to air in less than a year. And yes, less than a year of production time is nowhere near enough for a two-cour show. And that brings us to the present day. Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 looks inconsistent to say the least. The team is doing everything in their power to make the show look as good as possible, but the cracks are still visible. There are plenty of highlights, the show still features a ton of incredible animation. Of course it does. It still has a plethora of major names attached to it, but the issues cannot be ignored. Two different episode directors publicly complained about this production. Some people had mere days to draw layouts and correct multiple cuts. Some animators were disappointed with their work, possibly because the deadlines didn't allow them to do their best. The final product naturally suffers because of these issues. While the first 5 episodes were essentially perfect, the Shibuya arc has a lot of issues. Episodes 8 and 12 looked weak. People love using the low priority argument. According to them, the team is prioritizing certain episodes, which they are. And that would be fine, except Jujutsu Kaisen fights always looked good, regardless of how important they were. That's one of the reasons why this show is as popular as it is. The main staff is probably busy with a select few episodes, which is why the remaining ones are entrusted to young talent and debuting directors. Inexperienced animators working under a tight deadline will naturally make mistakes, which would then have to be corrected by the animation directors, meaning more work for them. It's a mess, and a well-documented one at that. If the 12th episode of a 23-episode show has this many cracks, I can only imagine what the 22nd episode would look like. The churn projects out as quickly as possible approach taken by the studio has come back to bite them. CEO Manabu Otsuka's business practice involves picking up as many major titles as possible, regardless of whether or not the studio can do said titles justice. Even the more polished shows suffer from these issues. The second season of Vinland Saga, for example, looked great. Mappa picked this title up along with the core staff led by director Shuhei Yabuta. The team did have a lot of time, but they had very few names. A lot of animators who worked on the first season were affiliated with Studio Wit and naturally did not work on season 2. And Mappa didn't have any available talent that could replace them. The small core team was cutting it dangerously close, despite having a healthy schedule. The show could have been in trouble if it had more action. The only exception to this was the Attack on Titan team helping out with episode 15, which was one of the best looking episodes. Chainsaw Man also had its problems. The last few episodes saw a noticeable dip in quality. Chainsaw Man was the exact opposite of Vinland Saga. They had a lot of talent on board, but the schedule wasn't friendly. Mappa shows always seem to lack one of the two major resources. The problem lies with the upper management. The people high up prioritize brand recognition over quality, and sadly enough, there's nothing we can do about it. And that is the way Studio Mappa operates. And based on the bits and pieces of information floating around, it won't change anytime soon. That's about it. Did you like this video? Check out this other bit of content if you did. Make sure to like and subscribe, and until next time.